What is up, my beautiful people out there around the world? Tuning in today on this Monday evening. I just want to say that I appreciate all the love and support each one of you have given me. But today we're here, Detox Yourself Live, to talk natural health, to talk diet, to talk sickness, disease, and it's about you. It's about being interactive and giving you guys the opportunity to dive deeper into some of the things that are holding us back from becoming the best versions of ourselves. I am RL Melpica, certified detoxification specialist, and I'm here to talk with you guys. That's what these lives are for. And kind of the topic of the day is like, why is it so hard to make changes to your diet? Why is it so difficult to change? And we're going to dive into that because most people think it's a very face value type of situation. Man, I've just been, eating this for so long, it's tough to give it up, which obviously that plays a major role, but it goes deeper than that. And that's ultimately what these conversations are about. So I put a poll out there. What is the most difficult food for you to give up? So I'd love to hear what you guys think. I only put three choices on there: meat, processed food, and coffee, because when we're talking about like these incremental stages of making changes to your diet and your lifestyle and your habits, those are usually the three that most of us have been we've kind of grown up looking at those specific foods as a staple of our culture, right? Meat, processed food, and coffee. Like those are three things that are just major staples. Obviously, there's others, and as we get further and further along, we'll get deeper into some more of the details of the diet, right? When we start talking about cooked versus raw and stuff like that. But we got to take baby steps, right? I know you guys are out there transitioning, and when you're on that transition, I'm all about meeting you where you're at. I never expect, you to be a 100% fruitarian or anything like that. And some of you are, and look, I'm just elated to hear that. And you tune in because of what I talk about, and you align with what I talk about here. But I know a lot of you out there are just dealing, just really on those beginning steps of changing your diet. And that's what I really want to dive into. So, but feel free to be interactive this entire show, this entire episode, because I love to answer questions. I love to have conversations about this because I've went through it. You know what I mean? I've went through this transition. I went from a meat eating, processed eating, coffee drinking individual, even soda drinking, even alcohol drinking individual, to where I am today, which is a high majority fruitarian, raw food fruitarian. So I want to talk about all of it, but let's dive into why it is that changing your diet is so difficult. Now, today's show and these lives are sponsored by my book, Detox Yourself, Free Your Mind and Change Your Life. It is available for pre-order right now. The link is in the description. You can get some exclusives when you pre-order it, including an autographed copy from myself, as well as a behind the book podcast that's exclusive to those who pre-order it, that will dive deeper into each chapter and really get to the nitty gritty of the happenings behind the book and how this whole thing came about. So definitely check that out. But a lot of these concepts, and in fact, a lot of things I talk about in this live are mentioned and talked about extensively in the book, right? So it's great to have it as a guide and things of that nature, right? But when we're talking about diet, right, let's dive into this real quick, because we can't take it at face value. We live in a world right now where you're being sold every minute of the day. Whether you're on your phone, you're on your computer, you're watching your TV, whatever it is, you're being sold something. You're being told different information, so much information, especially from a health perspective, that it is extremely difficult to actually figure out what's best for you. And what's crazy is, look, we're all individuals, we're all unique to an extent. But what these corporations and these, you know, different, whether they're nutritionists or health coaches or whatever the case may be, they find and take that uniqueness and build off of it. So what I'm trying to say is like you have so many different diets and so many different narratives based on specific individualities that they've made the common individual think that, our diet and what we need to eat and how we need to look at health is from an individual standpoint versus a collective standpoint. Now, I want to dive into that because it's very imperative for each one of you to know that yes, we all do suffer from different things. We all have different dispositions. We've all gone a different path and and have had different experiences along the way. Growing up in different environments, different cultures, different traditions, right? Nobody's eaten the exact same diet their entire life or throughout their entire lineage, right? That is just fact. But what we fail to forget and fail to understand is that underneath all of that, when it's all stripped away, we all have the same physiology. We all have the same physiology, and chemistry is still based on two basic principles. There's only an acid side and an alkaline side, an acid side and a base side, and that will never change. So while we are sold constantly on what the best diet is for us, whether it's the blood type diet or, certain cultures, do better on the carnivore diet or the keto diet. You know what I'm saying? All these different things, this different information that kind of confuses us and pushes a certain type of narrative. When you go beneath all of it, we all have the same physiology. And there are only two sides of chemistry. And we are, a big ball of chemistry. You know what I'm saying? If you really look at it. So when you look at it from that perspective and who we are physiologically and where we fall in line in nature, it always comes back to the frugivore diet. Now, am I on here saying that tomorrow you need to drop whatever you're doing and start eating as a frugivore? No. The reason I'm not saying that is because that's unrealistic. Can somebody do it? Can some people go cold turkey and do that? Yeah, of course. But what I talk about, and when we're talking about realistic incremental changes to habits, changes to lifestyle, because I never call this a diet. I call this a lifestyle. When we look at it from that perspective, like we have to truly understand where we've been intoxicated to even get to this point, to even try to make any changes. And it starts the minute you're born. You are born into a system, a medical healthcare system that kind of puts a blind eye to nutrition, kind of gives nutrition the cold shoulder. Everything is based on treating symptoms. Everything has to be a means to an end. And that even goes with food, because how many times have you heard this? Well, this food will heal this, or this food will heal that, or this food will cure this, or you need to eat this because it gives you this, that, and the other, right? All these different things where there has to be a means to an end. Not understanding that our bodies are actually self-healing. So if our bodies are self-healing, it really doesn't need anything to help it. It just needs you to get out of the way. And that is one of the biggest, I'll just plain and simple say it, mind fucks. There truly is. And when you understand that, how things change quickly. Oh, do they change quickly? Because think about that. Everything you've been taught. I need to take my vitamins, right? I need to eat my vegetables. I need to eat my carrots for my eyes. I need to eat the blueberries for my brain. What else? I need to eat my protein so I can be strong and build muscle. I need my B12s, if I'm plant-based. All these different things. I need the eggs for my protein as well. All these different things like means to an end, right? Everything has to an action reaction type of situation, not understanding that that's not how the body works. But through the conditioning of the world that we've been born into, that's specifically in America, like the culture and most developed countries, like that's kind of the way it is. That's kind of what we're born into. And that is to me, is the genesis of why it's so hard to change your diet. Because we've just been instilled, like these concepts have been instilled inside us, embedded inside us, programmed, conditioning, however you want to call it, brainwashed. I mean, think of the food pyramid, right? We grew up with the faulty ass food pyramid from a system that doesn't even really incorporate nutrition into their system, into their healthcare system. I've said this before, and it's in my book in more detail of how nutrition wasn't even introduced or recommended into medical school until 1985. And it was only recommended. It wasn't something that was mandated. They're basically saying, whether that's the AMA, the what is that, American Medical Association, or maybe one of these other government entities, basically said in 1985, we recommend you teach these future doctors and future practitioners, medical practitioners, we recommend that you teach them a little bit about nutrition. Recommend, not mandate. Recommend. Just think of the mindset there. So if you're an aspiring doctor or aspiring practitioner coming up, you're going through these funnels, these channels to ultimately, get to a point where you can practice, and nutrition is not a real part of the curriculum. Your entire focus, your entire premise as a practitioner is not focused on the internal terrain and the food that somebody's eating. It's focused on what the system has put together, and that is the symptoms. Because when you think about it, when people go to the doctor, they're, unless it's, just what do they call it? Just like a checkup or something like that. But majority of the time when they come to the doctor, they're coming with something wrong. I got this rash, or, I'm having this pain, or, I've been having this discharge, whatever the case may be. So the system is built to treat that symptom. So that is the majority of what doctors and practitioners are actually taught throughout medical school. And I say it all the time, like, doctors are amazing. Like, they're geniuses in the system that they're in. You know what I'm saying? Like a game developer that develops games for Square Enix or EA Sports is a genius within that code, within that system. You know what I'm saying? But that doesn't mean they know Sega system, or they know Visual Concepts or 2K or some of these other third parties, right? Doesn't mean they don't know something about it, but they're geniuses in what they've learned and kind of what they've been taught. And that goes back to us. Why is it so hard to change our diet? Well, because we've just been programmed and instilled this information that it's hard to break. And you take that information and you put it on a shelf. And then you take your experiences, meaning what have you been eating for the last 30, 40, 50 years of your life? And that, you put that on the shelf. And then you add to the fact that we're talking about implementing foods that you haven't really eaten your whole life, you haven't really become accustomed to, and you're probably going to detox in the process. You put that on the shelf. Those are 3 difficult things to overcome. Doesn't mean we can't do it. That's why we're here, and we can do it together. But all those things, like the sacrifice of those 3 things, are for the better you, for the greater good of you, becoming the best version of you. But I'm telling you, it starts with that first thing you put on the shelf. It's that programming. It's that conditioning. I talk to people all the time about transitioning their diet, all the time. And the number one sentiment that I receive is, well, if I eat all that raw food, if I eat all those fruits, how am I going to get all my nutrients? It's the number one. That's the number one thing I hear. And I understand it because we just haven't been educated. Like we've been, indoctrinated is the best word I could come up with. We've been indoctrinated. So I am here to detox your mind and detox your body. That's the beauty of it. Detox your mind and detox your body. But you got to detox your mind first. You have to. Because that generational conditioning, that societal conditioning is going to always bring you back to where you started until you detach yourself from it. And it's not easy. It's not. I mean, I remember myself, like, the idea of giving up meat 8 years ago, well, let's just say 8.5, 9 years ago, was so foreign to my mind. Like it wasn't even a thing. Like I was very interested in veganism and vegetarianism and whatnot. And I hate to use labels. I really do. But I was always interested in it. But I never even entertained that I could do it just because of the conditioning. Like, and even from a religious standpoint, right? And I talk a lot about this in my book too, because that was my main form of conditioning. But even, when people talk from a religious standpoint, whether you're a Christian, Muslim, or whatever the case may be, diet is a big part of that. And when you're attached to a religion and you put your faith and a lot of your energy into that, it's very difficult for you to separate that attachment to what's actually good for your body. Because if it's not good for my body, then why would it be attached to this religion that I put all of my faith in? That's another aspect. That's a super dichotomy with this. You feel what I'm saying? So, man, it's a lot there. A lot to uncover. But like I said, the main part is, why is it so difficult to change your diet? We get comfortable. You get comfortable with, knowing what you have to lean on, because we have made food and eating either entertainment or comfort. Those two things. And I get it. That is actually my biggest struggle, is not the comfort part, the entertainment part. Because right now, I mean, depending on where you are and what your circle looks like, my circle, besides what's inside of my household, eats a diet that is unhealthy. So I'm constantly around individuals that eat almost exclusively cooked food. And that becomes difficult. Now, the meat thing, I'm way beyond that. I mean, I'll never have an issue with that. Those days are long gone. Coffee, long gone. For the most part, processed food, long gone. Like, super easy, right? But cooked food, when I'm around people that are eating cooked food all the time, can be difficult. That is a struggle, right? And it's important to understand these struggles and work through them. You know what I mean? And that's what I implore to you guys, is understand your struggle, what causes those struggles, and work at them, right? It's all about incremental steps and building habits, but you have to understand the conditioning aspect of it. That's why I feel it's so important to understand health and the way your body truly works. Because look, in school they don't teach this shit. Health is like a super elective. Like it ain't mandated. And even if it is, it ain't like they're teaching the right shit. Like the lymphatic system, which is, in my opinion, the most important system when we're talking about health, is not even mentioned. Like I didn't learn about the lymphatic system until Dr. Morse, and shit, I was 40 years old. You know what I'm saying? Like I didn't know what a lymphatic system was. We're taught our entire lives that there's an immune system. But when you really start to dig deep into this shit, the lymphatic system is the immune system. Because there's no such thing as being immune to anything. Because in order to be immune to something, you have to be being attacked by something. There's no attack going on. What's happening is your body is responding, or your body is manifesting. One or two things. So what does that mean? Well, from constant bad eating habits, lifestyle habits, your body starts to accumulate a lot of acidic chemistry. Because when we eat those foods that are not meant for human consumption, not meant for the human design, they cause an acidic ash within the body. And those acids build up and they build up and they build up and they start to cause imbalance and also malfunction of your natural processes. And one of the most natural things our body does is eliminate. Like that's the beauty of the human design is we consume, we assimilate, and then we eliminate. And it's a beautiful thing when it is working and when your body's in balance and harmony. Consumption, assimilation, elimination. So what does that mean? Consumption, what you're eating, what you're drinking. Assimilation, taking that food and dispersing those nutrients throughout the body, that energy throughout the body. And then elimination, eliminating not only the digestive waste from the food that's not needed, but also the cellular waste. Because digestion, just like movement or anything your body does, makes like it your cells are working. And when your cells work, they have to excrete. And when they excrete their waste because they poop just like we do. And that waste needs to be eliminated through the lymphatic system. If it doesn't, if it builds up, if the lymphatic system is stagnant, those wastes accumulate. And those wastes are acidic. When I move my arm like this, my body's creating lactic acid right now. If I can't eliminate that lactic acid, guess what's going to happen? It's going to build up and it's going to corrode and destroy cells and tissue. That's what happens. And then you start going down the stages of disease. And we'll dive deeper into the stages of disease in some future lives here. Because I think I am getting a little far. I want to take steps to get there. I hope this isn't going over anybody's head. If it is, please leave a comment because we could talk about it. You know what I mean? This isn't something that is just you watch it one time and you all of a sudden know everything about the body, because there are so many elements to it. But I like to keep things as simple as possible. You know what I'm saying? Like, we don't need incredible medical jargon to understand how the body works, right? We don't need that. What we need is to understand the basic elements and see how truly easy it is to put your body in a better position than it is today. But when we've grown up our entire life looking at health in a different way, and then all of a sudden, someone like me jumps on here, someone like Dr. Morse or Lauren Ferris or Mariah Maza or Dr. Douglas Graham or Yaki jumps on here and starts to challenge everything you've been taught your entire life, like that's a mind fuck. I suffered, and I know some of you suffer from something called cognitive dissonance. And I talk about this in the book as well. Like when it comes to cognitive dissonance, like it's very hard to get past that because most people don't want to. They don't want the inconvenient truth. They'd rather have the convenient lie because they don't want their entire world to be shattered. If they were to believe something that completely contradicts what they've put their faith in their entire life or what they've learned their entire life, like that just shatters their current reality. And that's a tough pill to swallow. No pun intended. But you got to do it. That's a part of the awakening process. And you'll be better for it. You'll be better for it. Not easy by any means, but the key, look, the secret is freeing your mind to create a healthy life. You got to free your mind. It's uncomfortable. It's going to cause friction in a bunch of different areas. If you're on your health path and your significant other is not, that's difficult. But we can talk about that and ways we can get there because, look, I got to where I am before my wife did. Right? And it took a while. It actually took somebody else, which, hey, this is just how the dynamics of a relationship, right? It actually took someone else, actually Lauren Ferris. Let's give her props. Amazing natural hygienist. Shout out. It took Lauren Ferris to get to my wife, to help her to truly understand, because I wasn't getting to her. But when she got that information, shit, she took it. She took that shit and ran with it. Shout out to the queen. But yeah, like if you're in a relationship and you're on your health path and your significant other is not, or maybe they're far behind, or maybe they're just not at that point in their life, like there might be friction. There might be some type of, I don't want to say drama. It's not really the word I'm looking for, just some type of, some type of altercation or, whatever. Like the main thing is that you have to focus on you. Because when I talk about detoxing yourself, it's not just from a food and like physical consumption standpoint. It's also the people you keep around, the relationships you're in, the job that you're in, all of that matters. So if you're on that path and your significant other is not, that can cause friction. So what you have to do is be able to balance that out and then get to a point where like, okay, if I'm trying to be the best version of me, and I know that in order to be the best version of me, I need to make these changes. And this person I'm with is not willing to entertain that, or is holding you back, or is resenting you for doing so. Then the tough questions start to come up, like back to the conscious choice. Is this person for the betterment of me or the detriment of me? Hard questions. Hard questions. But if we're talking about having a healthy, happy life, being the best version of you, that's a question you might have to ask. The people around you, the company you keep. If you have a circle of friends that like to go to the bar 2-3 times a week and eat bar food and drink and all these different things, and that's not in alignment with what you want to be, if that's not in alignment with the best version of you, you got some tough choices to make. It's just how it goes. Are they for the betterment of you or the detriment of you? That's kind of, those are the tough things you have to understand, because not only have you been conditioned and you're trying to detox yourself from a mental standpoint, but damn near everyone around you's been conditioned, and they might not be where you're at. So what I say to anybody who's dealing with this is be the example. Be the one that they might resent at first because you're doing something they know they can't do or at the moment can't do. But what's crazy about this, and this has happened to me multiple times. I mean, I can't even count how many times. Eventually, they'll come around. Now, they might not do exactly what you did and get on your path necessarily. But it's crazy how you think that people around you are resenting you and, just going a different path and whatnot, and looking at you side-eyed like you're different or you're the black sheep or something like that. But they'll come around and you'll notice like a year later, 2 years later, they'll be like, hey, I know you've been doing that diet stuff. Like, how did you, blah, 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 blah. I saw that you lost some weight. Like, how did you do that? I saw that you were dieting, but like, what does it actually look like? And you'll be surprised. You'll be like, wow, I didn't even know you noticed. I thought you were just going a completely different direction. But that's how it happens. And that's how it'll happen within your family too. People get so worried about detaching themselves from the habits and lifestyles of those closest to them. But at the end of the day, like, when they see you being a better person, a better version of you, a happier version of you, looking better, feeling better, energetically better, that's contagious. They want that. They're going to feel that. And they might fight against it because of fear, because of just an attachment to this conditioned world. But just keep doing you and watch. The real ones will follow. And they'll appreciate. No judgment, nothing like that. Because if you're doing something to make you better, where's the fault in that? There's not. So why is it so difficult to change your diet? It's because you got a lot of things working against you. Number one, I talked about earlier, misinformation. So much misinformation. Because you can find a supporting study, website, blog, videos, influencer for any diet to make it make sense for you. They're all over, right? That's easy. You can, I got this, somebody could have told you you've got some type of, okay, let's say you've been diagnosed with an autoimmune disease, right? So there's probably 15, and I'm probably being conservative and modest here, 15 to 20 different influencers, coaches, nutritionists that have a diet specifically for that. Specifically for that. So they individualize you and, hey, that's your diet. If you got an autoimmune disease, you need to be on this diet. And then there'll be 15 to 20 other people that will refute that same diet and tell you about a better diet. And there's no fault to these individuals. They've got their most of them, I should say, got your best interest in mind. But like I said, when you slice through all of the minutia, it all comes down to one thing. Physiologically, we're all the same. It don't matter what you're going through. It doesn't matter. You have heart issues. You have cancer. You're diabetic, which is a big one because the misinformation on being diabetic is ridiculous. For somebody like myself who lives a fruit-based lifestyle and promotes that, can you imagine how many questions I get about, man, how do you eat all that sugar? Why? Because unfortunately, society has failed to teach us that there's a difference between refined sugar and natural sugar. And when I say natural, I'm talking about in whole food form. See, when people think if they eat raw sugar that it's okay. But raw sugar is still extracted. It's not in whole form. raw sugar from a fruit is completely different than raw natural sugar that you go buy it in a grocery store somewhere. And people think that sugar is synonymous, like excess sugar is synonymous with being diabetic. When we're talking about diabetes, it goes back to those three things I talked about earlier: consumption, assimilation, elimination. Well, from a diabetes standpoint, the problem is the elimination. And what I mean by the elimination is that when the blood vessels are so clogged up with fat, it's harder for the sugar to assimilate. It stays in the blood too long. So it's not a sugar issue. It's a fat issue. Change the diet. And there are tons of testimonies on this. You start to add more hydration to your diet, because hydration is ultimately gonna help with what? Flow, blood flow, lymphatic flow, elimination. So like the misinformation is unreal. That's the first thing you got to deal with. And that's that conditioning aspect. The third thing I said that, and I know I'm jumping around all over the place as far as the things I put on the shelf, but as far as things I put on the shelf, we're talking about the conditioning, right? We're talking about the misinformation. Then we're talking about the fact that the experiences that you've had, what you've been eating for the last, 4 or 5 decades. And then lastly, what you've learned about health in itself, because when you start detoxing, people get scared. The fear aspect. Because we've been conditioned on this germ theory so hard that we think if our body is going through some type of detoxing event, colds, flus, fevers, aches, pains, inflammation, all these different things, which is just the body healing, going through that detox process, people run the other way. And I hear this one all the time too. Yeah, I started eating that way and I just wasn't feeling right. Right? It didn't feel right. I was dizzy. I started, my body started aching. Good. That's good. That is the body going through the healing process. Healing is not a pleasant experience, but when it's over, it's an amazing experience. I always go back to when I gave up coffee about 3-4 years ago now. And I was a coffee drinker. I mean, not a shitload of coffee. I drank like 1 cup a day. And I say a cup, probably like 20 ounces a day. And I gave it up. And for 7 days, I went through probably one of the toughest detoxes I've ever went through. I mean, my body was aching, my joints, inflammation, like it was rough for 7 days. And then it was over. And I felt great. And I haven't looked back since. So I had to go through the 7 days, yeah. But it was so worth it. So worth it. To not have to ingest that poison that is coffee. But that's the kicker, is that when people start to go down this road and they start to improve their diet, you can get scared because of that. Now, one of the other things is some more misinformation is all of these different reports of, raw vegans that, die of malnutrition and shit like that, right? But the problem is, and look, this is no disrespect to anybody, my condolences go out to anybody, who's passed away, throughout, any change in their life or whatever they're going through. Because look, life can be rough, in many different aspects. But if you don't eat enough, and I don't care what diet you're on, and I don't care what you eat, if you don't eat enough, eventually the body's going to run out of energy. That's as simple as it gets. And I can't speak to every single situation, but from the ones that have been brought to my attention, that is pretty much what happened in every single circumstance. Every single circumstance. So I don't care if you're a carnivore, on the carnivore diet, the keto diet, Mediterranean diet, South Beach diet, Atkins diet, you name the diet. If you don't eat enough, eventually you're going to have some issues. Because at the end of the day, keeping it simple, your body needs energy. Your body needs energy. We are electrical beings. We need electricity. Our body has functions that it does, that autonomic functions that you don't even realize are happening. And without energy, you can't perform the functions. And then things break down. And then you perish. You expire. That's just nature in any capacity. So you got all these things working against you. You know what I'm saying? That's why it's so hard to change your diet. I ain't even talked about what goes on in society. I mean, you get in your car and you drive, and everywhere you look, you're being pulled in the direction of unhealth. You know what I'm saying? Of bad health. You go to the gas station to get gas. So you go inside, maybe you got to use the bathroom, and you got rows and rows of candy and cookies and cakes and chips and sodas and energy drinks, and then, tobacco and whatever the case. I mean, beer. I mean, flooded, right? And you get back in your car and you drive and you see a Jack in the Box, and then a Golden Chick, and then an Arby's, and then a McDonald's, and then you drive a little bit further, then you see Walmart, and you go into Walmart and they got their little produce section, but the rest of the store is a bunch of processed food, right? And then you get back in your car and then it's more upscale restaurants like Chili's and, name your Italian restaurant. Whatever. Olive Garden. Like, society does us no favors. Then you get on your phone and you watch something. You might be watching this, and then an ad pops up, and what is it? It's the same shit. It's Burger King, have it your way, right? And then the next commercial is a pill for diabetes, right? Diabetics. And then after that, it's an insurance commercial. So it all works together. Society is doing you no favors. That's why you got to invest in yourself. One of my favorite things to say is energy return on energy invested. You got to invest in yourself. You want to be the best you want to be the best version of you, invest in yourself. I mean, we put so much energy in so many other places, like sports. And look, I love sports. But I'm not going to put more energy in sports than my own health. I mean, that's ridiculous. You know what I'm saying? And we've just, like, food has been so synonymous with, so attached. I shouldn't say attached. So food has been, I should say attached. Yeah, attached to comfort, and food has been attached to entertainment, right? And when you combine those two things, it's very difficult to change your diet because you want to do social things and you feel that the only way you can do social things is if you eat bad. And when things go wrong or you're not feeling great or whatever the case may be, you also rely on food to make you feel better, right? You want those neurotransmitters to start hitting. And when things start to go awry, we default to what we're used to, not understanding that underneath it all is your diet in the first place. That's the one thing that hasn't been touched on enough, is that your mental health is incredibly tied to your diet. Because at the most basic aspect, the most basic element, it's about electricity. When you are balanced and you are functioning and you are truly being the best version of yourself, and you've allowed your body, you've removed a lot of burden from your body and it's functioning at high efficiently, you're going to feel great. the things that used to get on your nerves or irritate you or put you in a mood or make you anxious, they all of a sudden they don't anymore. Because, you know, I mean, if we want to go super technical, when we're talking about your adrenal glands and the, different hormones and steroids that it creates within your body, like that's what's ultimately associated with how you feel. And it's not just that, all your endocrine glands. But what happens is we dismiss that. And then we go to the doctor and we're told that we have a hyperactive thyroid or some autoimmune situation or whatever the case may be. And then we start treating it. We start taking medicine to compensate for what our body isn't doing anymore. But the problem is when we compensate for what our body isn't doing anymore, guess what? Our body's going to stop doing it altogether. So guess what? You rely on the medicine. You rely on the medicine, the chemicals, the acidic chemistry, instead of getting to the underlying reason that your body is malfunctioning in the first place. And that comes back to diet. Because we eat more than we do, besides breathe, we eat more than anything else. So if you're just looking at things in the most simple way for dissecting our bodies, and we're trying to figure out what is causing this internal flux, we would look at, from an evidence standpoint, well, what do we do more than anything else that would cause internal flux? Well, we eat shitty. We eat bad food. And that's for generations. The reason you're born with those genetics, those dispositions that you're born with, weak organs, whatever the case may be, what do you think that's from? It's from generations and generations of bad eating habits. Sure, toxicity and, things like the air we breathe and the water we drink and Wi-Fi, whatever, all that different thing. Yeah, yes, it matters. But when we're talking about the most influential aspect, it's the food that we eat. It's our diet. It's our diet. That's why it's so hard. Because we don't understand these things. So we never looked at diet like that. We've looked at diet as basically something that only influences our weight. That's it. So now we have a generation of people that think that if they get skinny, they're going to be healthy. It's not true. Getting skinny doesn't make you healthy. Losing weight doesn't make you healthy. But getting healthy, like losing weight is a byproduct of getting healthy. That's why I tell people all the time, because you'd be surprised how many people watch my channel or reach out to me just to lose weight. And I always have to have this discussion with them. It's like, okay, losing weight is fine, but that doesn't mean you're going to be healthy. Let's get you healthy and watch the weight fall off. Watch it fall off. Mindset. Looking at things different. Now they got that, what's that new drug? Let me look it up because I'll butcher it right now. Ozempic. That's it. Ozempic, right? The new weight loss drug and shit. Charles Barkley's using it. You know what I'm saying? All these famous people are on it. I think the girl in one of the girls in Stranger Things has been using it. I mean, that's like the big thing. Ozempic, lose weight. Man, if you guys just understood what that is doing to your body. But they don't teach you that. It's not what you see. You see an easy way to lose weight. And that's what people get attached to. And it's sad because from a humanistic and a humanity standpoint and a species standpoint, we are killing ourselves. We are getting, generationally, we are getting worse and worse. We are becoming lesser and lesser of I shouldn't, I kind of said that wrong. We are becoming lesser and lesser of what we were designed to be. We are on the decline. But the cool thing is that you guys and us, right? We're changing that narrative. Like, this is legacy shit because we're making these changes and we are going to expose our family to these changes. And then they're going to expose their families to these changes. This is called breaking generational curses. Breaking generational curses. So we, 20, 30 years from now, and even further, now a bigger piece of the population understands the body and we're doing better and we're living better. And the bigger we get, the more information we spread, the light that we share, it's just going to make the human species better. And we could start ascending back to what we ultimately were designed to be. Technology and AI and all these different aspects that are being created in labs everywhere, like that is working against us. And I'm not knocking technology because there are some great strides that have been made, but we have to stop trying to outsmart nature. Why are we trying to outsmart nature? The further away we get from nature, the worse off we're going to be. Because you can't outsmart the creator. You can't outsmart nature. You just can't do it. So, why is it so hard to change your diet? Because of all the things that are against you. So, what I implore you to do is start doing an audit on yourself to figure that out. All right. Start to figure out, what are all these things playing against me? Why is it so difficult? It's not just, it's not as simple as, man, I really like hamburgers and I don't want to stop eating them. It's deeper than that. Because if I told you that eating that hamburger would kill you instantly, would you eat it? Of course not. But I'm here telling you that eating hamburgers all the time is going to manifest itself in some form of dis-ease at some point in your life. Right? So if you know that and you still decide to constantly eat that hamburger, there's something deeper than your attachment to that hamburger. Because if I told you it would kill you instantly, you wouldn't eat it. So mentally, psychologically, what's truly going on there? If you know that the food that you consume the majority of the time throughout the day is hurting you, why would you continue to consume it? And you know that there's a diet out there. There's, and not just a diet, but a transition that you can go through to ultimately get you to a place where you're going to feel better, think better, look better, be better. What would stop you from doing that? That's what you gotta, that's where the audit comes into place. What's holding you back? And it's here. It's here. If I challenged you and said, you know what, I want you to go 2 days without eating any cooked food, could you do it? Leave a comment. Let me know. 2 days. If I challenge you 2 days to not eat any cooked food, could you do it? And I'd love to hear your answer. Making the change to your diet is difficult for all those reasons. One of the biggest problems is people who try to do it cold turkey. And you know what? I'm just not going to eat meat no more. I'm done. Yeah, they might go a couple days, but then they end up going back. Not everybody, but the majority, right? Keith Crowder, who I do Authenticate Yourself, the podcast with as well. He's a mindset coach and a fitness coach. He had this great statistic that when you try to when you try to make one change in your life, you're usually successful about 85% of the time. I shouldn't say you're successful about 85% of the time. When you try to change two things in your life, that 85% drops all the way down to 20%. Incremental changes. My transition plan when I work with people, and you can get it in my ebook. It's an 8-week plan, slow incremental transition. 8-week plan to get you to change habits. It's not about a diet. It's about a lifestyle. And lifestyles are built by habits. All right. So make sure you answer the poll because I'd love to see these results. If you're watching on replay and you have any questions or comments, please leave them. And I like do hashtag replay. It makes it easier for me to identify, and I can talk about that next time I go live. I'm going to try to go live every Monday. That's my plan, 6:30 Central Time, right? So we can talk about these things, right? And like I said, this particular live is brought to you by my book. You can pre-order it now. The link is in the description. Detox Yourself, the secret to freeing your mind and creating a healthy life. Free your mind, change your life. Talks about a lot of these concepts. Also, and when I say talks about a lot of these concepts, the book is broken into two parts. So the first part is the freeing your mind aspect. The second part is the actual detoxing your life part, right? So they go hand in hand, all right? And if you pre-order the book, you will get an exclusive behind the book podcast that dives deeper, and it's exclusive, so it's only if you pre-order it, that dives deeper into each chapter. All right. So make sure you go ahead and get that. You also get an autographed copy. All right. So make sure you do that. But I want to say appreciate you guys for jumping on with me. And I'll be back next Monday. We'll talk about another aspect of detoxing yourself. And definitely going to take your questions from the comments and bring those up in the next live as well. All right. So you guys all be good. I appreciate each one of y'all. Peace